In the vast silence of space on a desolate planet at the edge of the known universe, the wind howled across barren plains and ancient mountains. It was here, in the year 4782, that Professor Kim and his team of archaeologists made the discovery that would change galactic history forever. The morning had started like any other. Kim adjusted his environmental suit while his team prepared their equipment. They had been excavating this forgotten world for 3 standard months with little to show except dust and disappointment. Funding was running low and pressure from the Galactic Academy was mounting. "Professor, you might want to see this," called Park, her voice crackling through the comm system. She stood at the edge of a narrow ravine, pointing toward what appeared to be a smooth metallic surface reflecting the pale light of the distant sun. Kim made his way carefully down the rocky slope. What they had initially dismissed as natural formations now revealed themselves as structures, buildings perhaps, buried beneath millennia of sediment and stone. The team worked tirelessly, using sonic brushes to clear away the dirt without damaging what lay beneath. By nightfall, they had uncovered an entrance. Strange symbols adorned the archway, unlike any language currently known in the galaxy. Park ran her scanner over the markings, her eyes widening as the preliminary translations appeared on her device. It says, "Welcome to Outpost Horizon, established 2389 CE Earth Colonial Authority," she whispered. "Professor, these are human writings." The team fell silent. Humans, the mythical species mentioned in ancient texts and bedtime stories told to children across 1,000 worlds. Being said to have mastered the stars when most current civilizations were still struggling to harness fire. "Impossible," muttered researcher Jin, the team's historian. "Humans are legends, stories invented to explain the ancient technology we occasionally find. They weren't real, but the evidence before them suggested otherwise." Kim authorized the use of a containment field, and they carefully entered the structure. The air inside had been preserved, protected by technology that somehow still functioned after thousands of years. Lights flickered on automatically as they moved deeper into the complex, responding to their presence. In what appeared to be a central chamber, they found artifacts preserved in perfect condition: tools, furniture, and most valuable of all, data storage devices unlike anything in current use. Park connected one to their universal decoder, not expecting much. To everyone's surprise, the ancient device powered up immediately, projecting images into the air above them. They showed beings that walked on 2 legs with no scales or feathers, their skin in various shades of brown and pink. Humans. "The dating equipment," Kim said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Bring it here." The results left no room for doubt. The outpost was over 30,000 years old, far older than any known spacefaring civilization. If these readings were correct, humans had conquered the stars while most current species were still in their evolutionary infancy. As the team worked through the night, they discovered personal logs, scientific records, and star charts showing hundreds of human colonies across multiple galaxies. One recording showed a human female speaking directly to the camera, her words now translated by their equipment. "This is Commander Song of Earth Colonial Authority. If you're watching this, you've found one of our outposts. We hoped someone would eventually learn from what we left behind. Perhaps you'll succeed where we failed." The recording ended abruptly, leaving more questions than answers. What had happened to these humans? Where had they gone? Why had they disappeared at the height of their civilization? Back at their camp that evening, the team sat in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. Every history book would need to be rewritten, every origin story of technology questioned. The very timeline of galactic development would be thrown into chaos. "We need to be careful about how we report this," Kim said finally, looking at each team member. "The Academic Council will demand proof beyond what we've gathered so far." Park nodded, still staring at a small device she'd brought from the outpost, a simple handheld object with a faded symbol that looked like a partially eaten fruit. Whatever happened to them, they were real. Humans weren't just stories. As the alien sun set on the horizon, casting long shadows across the ancient human outpost, Kim couldn't help but feel they stood at the threshold of something monumental. This wasn't just a discovery about the past. It was a revelation that would reshape the future of every intelligent species in the galaxy. Tomorrow, he said, looking toward the partially excavated structure, we continue. Whatever secrets humanity left behind, it's our responsibility to uncover them. Little did they know that this was just the beginning. The legacy of humanity, the ancient ones of the stars, was far greater and more complex than any of them could possibly imagine. News of Professor Kim's discovery spread quickly through the scientific community. Within weeks, a specialized research vessel arrived carrying experts from across the galaxy. Among them was historian Lee, widely regarded as the leading authority on pre-galactic civilizations. The morning after her arrival, Lee stood before the entrance of the human outpost, her breath visible in the cold air. Unlike many of her colleagues, who approached ancient sites with clinical detachment, Lee felt a deep reverence for the past. These weren't just ruins. They were doorways to understanding those who came before. I've spent my entire career studying fragments of human technology, she told Kim as they entered the complex. Never once did I expect to stand inside something they built. Inside, teams had established research stations throughout the structure. In the central chamber, technicians worked carefully to extract information from the data crystals discovered during the initial excavation. These storage devices, impossibly advanced even by current standards, had somehow maintained their integrity for millennia. Lee was assigned to lead the decoding effort. For days, she worked tirelessly, sleeping only when exhaustion demanded it. On the fifth day, her persistence paid off. I've accessed a historical database, she announced to the assembled researchers. The room fell silent as she activated the projection system. The air filled with holographic images, cities that stretched to the horizon, vessels that dwarfed anything currently traveling between stars, and faces of humans going about their daily lives. These beings evolved on a planet they called Earth, Lee explained, her voice slightly unsteady with excitement. According to these records, they were physically fragile compared to most species we know. No natural armor, limited strength, relatively short lifespans. Then how did they achieve all this? Asked a younger researcher, gesturing at the images of massive orbital structures. That's what makes them remarkable, Lee replied. They compensated for physical limitations with extraordinary innovation. Where other species might take millennia to advance, humans made technological leaps in mere generations. The records showed humanity's expansion across their home system, then to nearby stars and eventually throughout multiple galaxies. They built wonders that defied understanding. Artificial worlds, stars harnessed for energy, and eventually, technologies that manipulated the fabric of reality itself. During the third week of research, Lee discovered personal journals that offered glimpses into human daily life. She found herself particularly drawn to the writings of a scientist named June, who had worked at the outpost studying stellar phenomena. The sunset here reminds me of summers in my hometown, June had written. Sometimes I wonder if we're moving too fast. 300 years ago, we were still confined to Earth. Now we have colonies in 12 galaxies. What will we become in another 300? Lee shared these passages with the team during their evening meetings. The words humanized these legendary beings, transforming them from mythical figures into people with hopes, doubts, and dreams. The most puzzling aspect of the records was the lack of explanation for humanity's disappearance. The data showed a civilization at its peak, billions of humans spread across thousands of worlds, mastering technologies that current species could barely comprehend. Then, abruptly, the records ended. It's as if they simply vanished, Lee said one evening, rubbing her tired eyes. No evidence of war, disease, or natural disaster. No indication of decline. They were thriving one moment, gone the next. A breakthrough came when a junior researcher managed to restore damaged files from a secondary storage system. These contained references to something called the Ascension Project, apparently a massive scientific undertaking involving every human world. Listen to this, Lee said, reading from the translated text. Project reaches final phase next month. The simulations show 98% probability of success. If we're right, humanity is about to evolve beyond physical limitations. I still can't believe we'll be the generation to take this step." The implications stunned the research team. Had humans somehow transcended their physical forms, evolved into something beyond flesh and technology? The records hinted at possibilities that bordered on the mystical. As word of these findings spread, ships from every major world arrived in orbit. The desolate planet, unnamed for millennia, became the focal point of galactic attention. Leaders and scholars debated what the discovery meant for their understanding of history and their place in the cosmos. Lee found herself working late one night, alone in the central chamber. As she sorted through another set of records, something unexpected happened. A holographic interface activated spontaneously, different from the ones they had been using. A star map appeared, showing locations scattered across multiple galaxies, each marked with the same symbol they had found at the eye entrance. "Other outposts," Lee whispered to herself. "Hundreds of them." She realized they had only scratched the surface of humanity's legacy. Whatever had happened to these remarkable beings, they had left behind far more than this single facility. Their influence likely extended throughout the known universe, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. As dawn broke over the excavation site, Lee stepped outside to watch the sunrise. Somewhere among those stars, human hands had once built wonders. Their story wasn't over, it was just beginning to be told. She smiled, thinking about how Professor Kim's discovery wasn't just changing their understanding of the past. It was offering a glimpse of a future that might someday be possible for all intelligent life. The legacy of humanity, the ancient ones of the stars, was a gift waiting to be unwrapped, one discovery at a time. 6 months after the initial discovery, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from over 300 worlds gathered in the ancient chamber of Grand Assembly, their conversations creating a steady hum that filled the vast space. At the center of attention stood Representative Choi, chosen to present the findings from what was now being called Horizon Sight. The chamber fell silent as Choi approached the speaking platform. Though he had addressed the council many times during his long career, never had he felt such weight of responsibility. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "For generations we have believed ourselves to be the pinnacle of galactic evolution. Today we must confront a humbling truth. Long before any of our civilizations reached for the stars, another species had already mastered them." The holographic display activated, showing images compiled from the Horizon Sight records. Gasps echoed through the chamber as council members viewed reconstructions of human cities, spacecraft, and technology. These beings, humans, achieved in thousands of years what has taken our combined civilizations tens of thousands, Choi continued. Their technological advancement followed an exponential curve that defies our understanding of developmental patterns. A delegate from the Logical Concordance rose to speak. "If these humans were so advanced, where are they now? Why do we find only ruins?" Choi nodded. "That remains the central mystery. The records indicate no catastrophe, no extinction event. They simply moved beyond." Over the next several hours, experts presented their analyses of human history and culture. What emerged was a picture that many council members found difficult to reconcile, a species of profound contradictions. Dr. Yoon, the leading xenopsychologist assigned to the research team, addressed the council next. "What makes humans truly fascinating isn't just their technology but their nature. They were emotional beings in ways that most of us would find extreme. They created art for no purpose but expression. They formed bonds based on concepts like love and friendship rather than practical advantage." She displayed examples of human creative works, music, paintings, literature, recovered from the data archives. Yet these same beings were capable of terrible violence, she continued. Their history includes countless wars fought over resources, ideology, even slight differences in appearance or belief. They nearly destroyed themselves multiple times before reaching the stars. The council chambers buzzed with uncomfortable murmurs. Most spacefaring species had long ago evolved beyond such internal conflicts, seeing them as inefficient and counterproductive. How could such an unstable species achieve technological superiority? Asked the representative from the Silicon Collective, a purely logical machine intelligence. That is precisely the paradox, Yoon replied. Their emotional nature, which we might consider a weakness, appears to have been a driving force behind their creativity and innovation. Their short lifespans created urgency. Their competitiveness pushed boundaries. Their capacity for both cooperation and conflict generated a dynamic tension that seemed to accelerate progress rather than hinder it. As the presentation continued, a particularly disturbing aspect of human nature emerged. Unlike most advanced species who evolved toward greater specialization, humans remained generalists. They could adapt to almost any environment, learn almost any skill, and pivot their entire civilization in new directions within a single generation. They were unpredictable, explained Choi, and that unpredictability seems to have been their greatest strength. During a brief recess, council members gathered in small groups, discussing the implications. Some expressed fear that humans might someday return. Others argued that studying human technology could advance their own civilizations by millennia. When the session resumed, attention turned to the mysterious Ascension project mentioned in the recovered data. Professor Kim, who had been invited to address the council, projected the fragmentary information they had gathered. We believe humanity was attempting something unprecedented, he explained. The references suggest they were seeking to evolve, beyond physical form, to transcend the limitations of biology altogether. A hushed silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Are you suggesting, asked a representative from the Elder Worlds, that these humans might still exist, but in a form we cannot perceive? It's one possibility, Kim acknowledged. The records indicate they were researching dimensional boundaries, consciousness transfer, and energy-based existence. As the session stretched into its second day, debate intensified. Some council members advocated for immediately shutting down research at the Horizon site, fearing the technological secrets might be too dangerous. Others argued that understanding human achievements was essential for their own futures. Late in the evening, a junior delegate from a newly spacefaring world asked the question many were thinking, but none had voiced. What if they're watching us right now? The question lingered uncomfortably in the air. On the final day, Representative Choi presented the research committee's recommendations. We propose establishing a multi-species scientific coalition to study the human legacy. Knowledge should be shared equally among all council worlds, and most importantly, we must approach this discovery with humility. He displayed the final image, a star map showing suspected human outposts scattered throughout the galaxy. Somewhere in these stars lies the answer to what became of humanity. And perhaps in understanding their journey, we might glimpse our own distant future. As the council session concluded, delegates departed with more questions than answers. In ship galleys and private quarters, conversations continued long into the night. If humans, biological beings with lifespans barely reaching a century, could achieve such wonders, what might be possible for all of them? The paradox of humanity had become a mirror in which every species now examined itself, wondering what untapped potential might lie within their own nature. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Seeker, watching as the ship approached the coordinates listed in the ancient human records. After the Galactic Council's decision to explore suspected human outposts, dozens of expeditions had been launched across the galaxy. Han's team had been assigned to investigate a location in what humans had once called the Orion Spur, dropping out of FTL in 321, announced the navigation officer. The view screen shifted as the stars returned to their normal appearance. Before them hung a massive structure, a ring nearly 20 kilometers in diameter, orbiting a dying red dwarf star. Definitely not natural, muttered Han's second-in-command. Design matches the architectural patterns from Horizon site. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, running scans and gathering data. Unlike the abandoned outpost that Professor Kim had discovered, this structure showed energy readings, faint but unmistakable. "It's still operational," Han said, unable to hide the awe in her voice. "After 30,000 years." As the seeker moved closer, automated systems on the ring station activated. Lights flickered along its surface, and communication arrays oriented toward their ship. "We're being scanned," reported the sensor officer, tension evident in her voice. "The scan it's unlike anything in our database. It's going through our shields as if they weren't there." Han remained calm. "No aggressive moves. Let's see what happens." After several tense minutes, a communication channel opened. No visual appeared, but a synthesized voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. "Welcome, children of the younger worlds. This facility recognizes your approach as non-hostile. Limited access granted." The crew exchanged glances. The system had not only scanned their ship but had apparently analyzed their language and cultural references as well. Han made the decision to dock with the station. Leading a small team in environmental suits, she entered through an airlock that had opened at their approach. Inside, lights activated along corridors that seemed to stretch for kilometers. "The air is breathable," reported the team's scientist after checking her instruments. "Temperature and pressure adjusted to our physiological needs." Cautiously, they removed their helmets. The station seemed to be observing them, learning from them. Doors opened before they reached them, leading them deeper into the structure. They discovered vast chambers filled with technology that defied understanding, machines that appeared to manipulate gravity itself, energy systems that drew power from seemingly nowhere, and most intriguingly, what appeared to be a massive data core at the station's center. "It's a library," realized the team's data specialist. "Or maybe a museum." As they explored over the next several days, they found that the station would respond to simple verbal questions, providing information about human history, science, and culture. It seemed designed specifically to educate visitors, though certain areas remained locked behind security protocols they couldn't breach. News of their discovery spread quickly. Within weeks, ships from across the galaxy arrived to study the ring station. Among them was a battle fleet belonging to the Valerians, a species known for their military prowess and expansionist policies. From the Seeker's bridge, Han watched, with growing concern as the Valerian commander demanded exclusive access to the station, claiming security concerns. "This is a scientific expedition," Han responded firmly. "The Council was clear that discoveries are to be shared among all worlds." The Valerian commander's mandibles clicked in what translated as dismissive laughter. "The Council isn't here? Captain, power is what matters. This human technology could advance our weapon systems by centuries. Step aside or be removed." Han refused to withdraw her ship. As tension escalated, the Valerian fleet moved into attack formation. Han ordered her crew to battle stations, knowing they were hopelessly outgunned. Just as the Valerian flagship powered up its weapons, something extraordinary happened. A pulse of energy, invisible but detected on all instruments, emanated from the ring station. In an instant, every ship in the Valerian fleet went dark, their systems completely disabled. Han's communications officer looked up in shock. "Captain, our systems are untouched." A message appeared on all screens. "Defensive protocols active. Unauthorized aggression detected. Temporary system suspension initiated." The Valerians were not destroyed, just rendered completely powerless. Life support continued to function on their vessels, but weapons, engines, and communications were disabled. A precise, measured response that prevented conflict without causing harm. Hours later, as Han's team continued their research, they discovered a record that explained what had happened. The station, and apparently all human outposts, contained automated defense systems programmed with clear ethical guidelines. They would allow exploration but prevent violence. They would share knowledge but restrict access to technologies that could cause harm. They would protect but never attack. They weren't just advanced technologically, Han told her crew that evening. They had evolved ethically as well. As more expeditions discovered similar outposts throughout the galaxy, a pattern emerged. Each facility contained guardians, not living beings, but autonomous systems that had maintained their vigil for millennia. Each offered knowledge, but only to those who came in peace. Each protected something deeper within, something that remained inaccessible. When Han returned to report to the Galactic Council, she stood before the assembled representatives with a new understanding. "These aren't just remnants of a dead civilization," she explained. "They're a test. The human guardians are watching how we interact with their legacy, how we treat each other when presented with power we don't fully understand." In the months that followed, dozens of species worked together at the ring station, sharing discoveries and slowly earning greater access to its knowledge. The Valerians, after their ships were eventually reactivated, withdrew to their territory in silence. One evening, as Han stood alone in the observation dome watching distant stars, she felt a strange sensation, as if someone was watching her. There was no one else present, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being evaluated, measured against some standard she didn't fully understand. "Are you still out there?" she whispered to the empty air. "Are you waiting for us to prove ourselves worthy?" Only silence answered her. But somewhere in the depths of the station, deep in systems that had kept their vigil across the ages, her question was noted, analyzed, and added to the growing file on the younger races now walking the paths that humanity had once blazed across the stars. The grand hall of the newly established Interstellar Research Coalition buzzed with activity. 2 years had passed since the discovery of the first human outpost, and in that time, everything had changed. Species that had once viewed each other with suspicion now worked side by side, united by a common purpose: understanding the legacy of humanity. In a quiet laboratory away from the main activity, scientist Song hunched over a workstation, rubbing her tired eyes. For months she had devoted herself to deciphering what appeared to be an activation sequence hidden within the data recovered from multiple human outposts. The pattern had first caught her attention when comparing energy signatures from different facilities. "You should rest," said her assistant, placing a cup of steaming beverage beside her. "You've been at this for 30 hours straight." Song shook her head. "It's all connected somehow. These aren't just random outposts. They're parts of a larger system. I'm sure of it." Her dedication stemmed from more than scientific curiosity. Growing up on a frontier world, Song had always felt drawn to the stars, convinced that something important waited to be discovered. When reports of the human ruins first reached her homeworld, she had immediately volunteered, feeling as if her entire life had been leading to this moment. The terminal before her displayed a 3-dimensional map of known human facilities scattered across the galaxy. Each pulsed with a unique signature, a complex mathematical sequence that changed subtly over time. Song had spent weeks analyzing these patterns, convinced they were a form of communication. What if they're not just data storage facilities? She mused aloud. What if they're nodes in a network, waiting for the right signal to connect them? That night, as most researchers slept, Song made the breakthrough. The sequences weren't changing randomly. They were responding to each other, across vast distances, and within their communications was a hidden message, a key that could only be assembled when multiple facilities were studied simultaneously. By morning, Song had compiled her findings and requested an emergency meeting with the coalition leadership. Representatives from a dozen worlds gathered in the conference chamber, their faces showing varying degrees of skepticism and interest. "I believe I've found a way to activate a direct communication system," Song explained, displaying her data on the holographic projector. "The human outposts aren't just passive repositories. They're waiting for someone to understand their full purpose." After heated debate, the coalition granted permission to attempt activation. A date was set, communications were established with teams at 7 different outposts across the galaxy, and preparations began for what might be the most significant moment in modern history. On the appointed day, Song stood in the central chamber of the original Horizon site, surrounded by representatives from every major galactic power. Professor Kim, now elderly but still sharp-minded, had returned to witness the event. Captain Han was there too, her experiences with the Guardian systems making her an invaluable advisor. "If this works," Song explained to the assembled dignitaries. All 7 outposts will synchronize their communication arrays and establish a connection to something. The records refer to it as the Nexus. At precisely the calculated moment, Song initiated the sequence. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a low hum filled the chamber as dormant systems awakened. The floor beneath them vibrated slightly as machinery that had waited patiently for millennia stirred to life. In the center of the room, particles of light began to coalesce, forming a sphere that grew steadily larger. The sphere expanded, becoming a swirling portal of energy, and then a figure stepped through. The holographic image of an elderly human male dressed in simple clothing, his eyes reflecting wisdom accumulated across ages. "Greetings," the figure said, his voice resonating with warmth. "I am the custodian. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to this moment of connection." A stunned silence filled the chamber. Though everyone knew this was likely an advanced hologram or artificial intelligence, the presence felt unmistakably alive, conscious in a way that transcended normal parameters. "Where are the humans?" asked Professor Kim, his voice barely above a whisper. The custodian smiled. "Humanity still exists, but not in the form you might understand. We haven't gone extinct. We've transformed." Over the next hours, the custodian explained what had happened to humanity. At the height of their civilization, humans had discovered something fundamental about the nature of consciousness and reality itself. They had learned that the physical universe was merely one layer of existence, that consciousness could exist beyond the limitations of matter, energy, time, and space. "The Ascension Project was our greatest achievement," the custodian explained. "Not a technological marvel, but an evolutionary step. Humanity chose to transcend physical form, to become beings of pure consciousness existing in dimensions beyond your current perception." The revelation stunned the gathered representatives. It wasn't technology that had made humans disappear from the galaxy. It was evolution on a scale previously unimaginable. "Why leave all this behind?" asked Captain Han, gesturing to the outpost around them. "Why create these facilities if you moved beyond them?" "For you," the custodian replied simply. "We knew other intelligent life would eventually reach for the stars. We left these outposts as guideposts, tests, and eventually gateways. The knowledge contained here isn't just about our history, it's a roadmap to your future." The custodian explained that humanity had not abandoned the physical universe, but maintained a connection to it through these facilities. They watched, waited, and hoped that younger species would one day be ready to understand what they had discovered. "We were not perfect," the hologram continued. "Our history contains terrible mistakes, wars, and suffering alongside our achievements. We left these records intact, both our triumphs and our failures, so you might learn from them all." As dawn broke over the ancient outpost, the custodian made an unprecedented offer. The coalition would be granted access to higher levels of human knowledge not all at once, but gradually, as they demonstrated their ability to use it wisely. "This isn't charity," the custodian explained. "It's investment in potential we see in all of you. Together you've begun to overcome ancient rivalries and differences. That cooperation is the first step on a path that might someday lead where humanity has gone." In the days that followed, news spread throughout the galaxy. Some received it with joy, others with fear. Religious movements arose around the revelation. Scientists debated what it meant for their understanding of consciousness and reality. Song found herself suddenly famous, though she cared little for the attention. What mattered was the work ahead, generations of discovery and learning from the legacy humanity had left behind. Late one evening, as she worked alone in the communication chamber, she asked the question that had been troubling her since the custodian's appearance. "Can we ever truly follow where you've gone? Or will we always be less than you were?" The custodian's image appeared, though she hadn't activated the formal communication protocols. "You misunderstand," the figure said gently. "We didn't leave this legacy because we thought ourselves superior. We left it because we see in you the same spark that drove us forward, the capacity to grow beyond your origins, to become more than your creators could have imagined. The universe isn't a hierarchy with some species above others. It's a journey we're all taking together, just at different points along the path. As stars wheeled overhead, visible through the outpost's ancient dome, Song felt a sense of profound connection, not just to her contemporaries but to those ancient humans who had walked these halls millennia ago. Different in form perhaps, but alike in their curiosity, their determination, their hope for something more. The legacy of humanity wasn't technology or power, it was possibility, the door they had opened for all who would follow in their footsteps across the stars.